Hi, my name is Jim Congdon. I'm the lead pastor here at Topeka Bible Church. And what you're looking at is a one-of-a-kind nativity set, hand-carved out of olive wood from Bethlehem, Israel. I lead tours to Israel every year or so. And I noticed this set 10 years ago in 2010 in an olive wood shop in Bethlehem. Bethlehem is, as you know, about 5 miles south of Jerusalem. It has about 40,000 people if you include the suburb Beit Sahur from where this shop comes from. And I noticed it, and as I talked with the owner of the shop, his name is Joseph, which is a nice coincidence because it's very close to the traditional shepherd's field where Joseph married and gave birth to the baby. Joseph told the story about how he was a typical Palestinian Muslim Arab, and he married this girl that he loved. And then after they got married, she had gone to a Baptist church there in Bethlehem, and she had become a Christian. And he had gotten very irate at her, and she wanted him to go to the Baptist church. He never would attend. For 7 years, he simmered with anger at her and nearly divorced her, Joseph said many times. And but then finally a friend of his got him to go to the church, and it was that day that he converted to Christ too. He became a Christian. So the Christians are a minority, just a couple of thousand of them now in Bethlehem in the area. They used to be about 100% of the population, as you can imagine, back in about 1950. But with the persecution that they go through and so forth, they're down to just a few thousand people, and they can't rent houses and they can't work regular jobs, so they're struggling economically. My bus driver from Nazareth, an Arab Christian, was a friend of this Joseph Cassis, and he said, would you go to his shop and maybe help them financially? We went to the shop. I saw this piece. I just stared at it, and he wanted to sell it to me. And I said, ask him what it was, and it was the price of a small car, and it was just way too much. And I said, but I love it. And I came home and I talked to some of my people about it, and they said, well, how nice would this be to own this? And so in 2012, I went back and I purchased this, and it was shipped over here. As you can imagine, Bethlehem is the world's center of olive wood carving. And none of these pieces are produced in a typical factory, because you can get a factory produced little nativity set for just a couple $100. But when they're hand carved by, and they're heavy, when they're hand carved by an expert who signs them, then this piece, for instance, would be a couple $1,000s just by itself. So what these are is individually, uniquely carved. So this is a one-of-a-kind set. And after it got shipped here, we decided to make it an annual display. And so you have here a typical nativity in that it has both the wise men and the shepherds, even though, of course, the wise men didn't come for a couple of years later. You have about 20 pieces with a sheep, with baby Jesus, and just a really wonderful picture of animals, everyone adoring and worshiping the Savior of the world, who is, of course, the center of Christmas. The stars of every nativity set, of course, are the Holy Family. Here's Joseph, here's Mary, here's the baby. These are, of course, traditional. We know that Mary was probably at most 14 or 15 years old, and she had just suffered through what is a 5-day journey in those days from up north, where she lived in Nazareth. And Joseph, her husband at that time, we would call him engaged, but he was a husband. So they'd come down, and in all likelihood, this birth took place in a cave there in a shepherd's field just outside Jerusalem. And so, because the only other place they had to lay him was the filth of the stable floor, they put him in a manger that the ox and the animals would use to eat out of. And so that's where he was born. And here you have this scene where where the shepherds who saw the angels that night, according to Luke chapter 2, shepherds, the most reviled and looked down upon members of Israelite or Palestinian society at that time. Filthy people who never bathed, were not allowed in the temple. They were the ones to whom the angels revealed this amazing news. And so they came, probably leaving one or two shepherds with the sheep, and we have sheep actually as if they'd come along too. And they came and they worshiped the child that night. A couple of years later, wise men, these were magi, short for magicians, from Babylon, far away, who had looked at the stars and knew that something amazing was happening. They brought gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. By that time, probably the Holy Family lived in a little house there. And so that was sometime later. But here you have this scene where you have shepherds, where you have wise men, and where you have the Holy Family, and all of them worshiping the child, the Holy Child.